Did you ever think, how did that person get that job? Yeah, there are a couple of people out there where people wonder, how could this person ever get to that level of seniority or to that leadership position where the person is in right now? And unfortunately, often we promote the wrong people. And we are going to talk about what happened in the last week and, of course, what has this to do with leadership. And then we're going to look into how do we promote the right people. We're going to have a great guest here who's going to talk about you how to do the job right. More about that at the end of my part when we transition into the interview. But of course, the first most important aspect now when we talk about work today was a survey which Statista did. Statista.com, one of the largest platforms for reliable scientific data about surveys, about different aspects of life. You can access a lot of data for free, not all of it, of course, because they have to run the platform profitably. And when we look into it, they did a survey on if workers want to return to the office or if workers want to stay at home. So they interviewed, let me just check, 2,181 pandemic remote workers, which means people who transferred into working from home or working remotely somewhere else, not in the office, during the pandemic, due to the pandemic. And the survey was done from March 17th to April 5th, 2021. So this year, very fresh data, and due to the amount of people, more than 2,000, this is a representative survey. So of course, the question now is, do people want to return to the office or do people want to stay at home? So let's just take a look at the number, because you will find, I'm very sure that you will find this survey taken out of context and press reasonably soon, because it is tempting to do clickbait headlines where people just claim something out of context, which then isn't entirely correct. So we're going to look at the data properly. How many people want to return to the office? Like they did work before, only on-site only work. Just think of a number now in your mind. Pretty sure you have the wrong number in mind, because 2% want to return to the office as they did before. And I'm sure we will find headlines like 98% of all workers do not want to return to the office. That is not true. That is not what the survey says, because about exactly one third, 33% prefer a hybrid model. Hybrid model means that you work from home or work from anywhere else except the office, and then work at the office as well in a certain pattern. So for example, large corporations like Microsoft already offered these kind of work models to their employees. So at Microsoft, they announced that publicly with a very short remote work guideline. The remote work guideline basically only says, it's the only line in there, offer as much flexibility as possible. 50% remote work is always possible. More has to be agreed with management, leadership, and your team, which I think is a brilliant idea. And many organizations shifted to an idea where they said either it's 3 days in the office, 2 days somewhere else, or either it is 2 days in the office and 3 days somewhere else. This is a model which, in my opinion, will make a huge share of what we see in the future. However, when we look at the vast majority in the survey, 65% want to remain remote workers. That's 2/3. And of course now you will have the next question, and they did more than one question in this survey. The next question is, what happens if your organization doesn't satisfy your wishes or satisfy your needs after the pandemic? So for example, you want to work from home, but they say, no, you have to come back to the office like you did before. Or you say, I want to work in the office, and they say, no, we simply decided that we're not going to have these expensive office spaces. We only work from home. So it goes one way or the other. So what happens if they do not satisfy your wishes after the pandemic? The most important number here is the first one. 58% said they would rather look for a new job instead of returning. And that is a very straightforward, very strong statement. Nearly 2/3 of your workforce, or even when we take, maybe we just take the lowest number possible, at least half of your workforce, which wants to have a different kind of organization with work, now says either we have a more flexible option or I'm going to look for a different job. And that will make many people move on the job market. Many organizations hoped that in due course of the pandemic, we will now have a market where the employers can choose because there will be such high unemployment, but that didn't happen. Talent is still scarce. Scarcity of talent on the market is a severe issue for most organizations. So more than 50% say, if the offer from my organization's offer, if that's not flexible enough, then I'm not going to return. I rather look for a new job. 31% say they are not sure, so they are not sure how to react. And 11% say that it's not essential to them. So about every 10th, okay, one way or the other, it's not relevant to me. They say, I will follow whatever they want. And of course, they now ask, what are reasons in favor and against remote work? The reasons against remote work, first one, 35% mentioned that inability to unplug, because of course, suddenly work is at home and home is work. You know this issue if you work from your desk at home. Second most mentioned aspect is distractions at home. I think that especially applies to families with children. I'm working here at my desk right now, but I live on my own, no children, so I won't be distracted except I turn on the TV or Netflix or a podcast or whatever else, which I shouldn't do at work. So time management and focusing is not everyone's strength. So nearly 1/3 say distractions at home, not great. The same amount, 28%, however, and that's the third most mentioned aspect, say tech problems. We have the year 2021, and still about 1/3 of the workforce says that their organization is reasonably unable to implement a work from home or work from anywhere. Not only culture, but even a work from home, work from anywhere opportunity. I'm not even talking about culture. I'm simply talking about the option, the technical availability. And that is a very poor show from free enterprise. Of course, reasons to prefer remote work. Number one, 84% said no commute. People don't like commute for obvious reasons. I always enjoyed commute after I saw that I could learn or read, but many people do not. And I can understand that this is a very personal question, of course. And cost savings is what 75% mentioned. Of course, when you don't have to commute, you save a lot of money, especially in metropolitan areas where either traveling by car with a parking space to pay for, even if you get one for free, that's a benefit which you have to tax and then pay indirectly or directly via that means, or you go by public transport, which can also be very expensive depending on where you live and how close to the center you live. So you see there are different aspects, but the main message from this survey by Statista is clearly you have to offer flexibility, and if you don't, this will harm your organization significantly. So it is really important that you now have the right people in place and promote the right people. Because when you now have the wrong leaders in place, you will have a high employee turnover, which will cost you tremendous amounts of money for recruiting. It will give you a very bad reputation on the market. Your employer's brand will suffer. All that will definitely and massively affect your bottom line, your productivity, and the employee's motivation altogether. So just think of that you really need to take care of having the right people in place. Talking about leadership now, we had elections. You heard of that in the UK. And Nicola Sturgeon in Scotland, Scottish National Party, a rather left-wing party for our international listeners, slightly more left-wing than the usual Labour Party in the UK. They won the elections, not the majority though. However, Scotland now claims to have another referendum, which Westminster denies, and then unfortunately escapes for the wrong reason. Because Westminster then says, at the moment, we are recovering from a pandemic which has huge economic impact. Yes, the UK is facing huge economic impact, but the reason is only partly the pandemic. The main reason for a massive economic impact is called Brexit. And Boris Johnson and his friends also should be honest that the impact is not the pandemic. The impact is that you left the European Union here. So I think this will strengthen Nicola Sturgeon's position to do a referendum, and we will see how that story evolves. And no matter how hard you try, when you have only one bad manager, one bad leader in place, I'm now going to give you a perfect example how this can harm your whole organization. HSBC, a bank which you most likely will know, it's a huge bank in the multi-billion-dollar industry of the financial services. And they had one major issue because one son of a cleaner His name is Joe. His Twitter account, it's a public message, so I'm not going to tell you any secrets here. Joe Cousin89 is his Twitter handle, and he published a letter which his mother left after she left to go into pension. She retired, and he posted, and this is his statement now, and this is why I love my mum. She's been cleaning banks for 35 years and today walked out with this lovely note, left for that awful manager. Happy retirement, mum. Always have the last laugh. Hashtag ta-da! That's what he wrote. More than 14,000 retweets, more than 1,500 quote tweets, more than 160,000 likes. So not even counting in the copy, paste, screenshots, whatever it is, you can expect that this has an outreach in the millions and significantly harms the employer's brand that HSBC have, which, as every other bank as well, already is not great. Financial services and especially large corporate banks do not have a great reputation. And I'm going to read out to you the very short letter. What she wrote, this mother who cleaned banks for 35 years, said, "Hi ladies, tomorrow will be my last clean for HSBC. I've made up a bucket," and then she tells how she prepared everything for the next cleaner. Then, that's the most important part now. "I've left the job, Julie, after the way you dressed me down in the office. It was nothing more than aggressive and cruel, but that's a reflection on your character, not mine. So going forward, please all of you remember, in a world when you can be anything, be kind, because you are all, double underlined, all know better than the cleaner. Regards, Julie." So you need one cleaner, what most people would consider someone on operational level, where you think that is someone that cannot harm your organization. You need one cleaner, one Twitter account, and one picture to damage a and of course you need one bad manager, only one, and you can get harm in a multi-billion-dollar corporation on a global level. So congratulations. That was sarcasm now for our German listeners, because I know that Germans don't have humor. Congratulations and high commas to HSBC. You really have to work on what you do. Because it's not going well. And when you now say it's every bank is like that, that's not true. Monzo Bank, a bank which is known as the most diverse bank, especially when it comes to LGBT representation, with more than 20% of their staff. City of London, so it is a conservative area. Don't claim that conservative areas are like that. No, it's not the area, it's you. Monzo Bank now offers employees paid leave after a pregnancy loss, up to 10 extra days paid leave. I can tell you that because it happened in my circle of friends. A close friend lost her baby, which was a very sad moment. And by the way, never as a man say that you can feel how bad it is, because you can't. No one of us can. And after I thought I'm only going to experience that one in my life in my circle of friends, I just last week saw with a friend who is now not very close to me at the moment in Hamburg, that she lost 2 children due to pregnancy loss. And Monzo Bank here shows that banking and the financial industry can be good, but you need good managers and good people on board. And when you have a toxic culture, you make toxic decisions, offer toxic leadership, and the harm you get afterwards is your own fault. I really didn't want to bring your mood down, so we're now going to look into what are the problems and how can we do it better. So first, problem number 1, because we now want to look into how can we promote the right people and get the right people on the career ladder. So step number 1, problem number one. Problem number 1, when you have no goals, nothing is measurable, you can't compare anything to anything, and you simply do not track results properly, people will always think something is going wrong here. They simply prefer to promote people who they like. And that, of course, cannot be the right choice to promote someone, because you always claim everything needs to be measurable. That is one of the standard phrases every manager, every executive says. You cannot manage what you cannot measure, which is not entirely correct. KPIs, the key performance indicators, are important, but the so-called CSFs, the critical success factors, the soft factors become more and more important, not since yesterday, but for a decade already. It's just that some industry don't do well with it, especially the financial world, banking in particular. So problem number 1 is when you don't have anything to measure and compare, people will always think that, and now problem number 2 comes up, is that you arbitrarily just pick someone out of a network. And the network always or often is connected to a senior executive promotes someone who comes from the same family / university / circle of friends. Someone just picked randomly because you like them and you want to give them you just expect that they give you a favor back because you gave them a favor. And that's a huge issue in the financial world, as we all know. Sometimes they even try to cover it up. They then promote two people, but to one they give a real promotion and to another one they give a pseudo promotion. I just had that during a consultancy gig where I saw they promoted someone who wanted to be the IT lead, and he had more than 200 because he was the one they wanted to have, not because they could have a day off with him or maybe a day off more. It was simply the best person, the best people manager. Anyone said that should be our future department leader. So they promoted that person to the department leader. They were reluctant to do so for 2 years until the person was about to leave, and then they wanted to keep him. So they offered him a position, IT team lead. They did not pay him what he wanted to get paid. That might be the point where he should have left. But he didn't, he stayed. And then they told him, oh, by the way, your sign-off rights. And the sign-off rights are the rights where what is the amount of money you can sign off without asking a senior executive? His sign-off rights were 50 euros. I am not making this up. A department, 200 people in there, sign-off rights 50 euros. And of course, that person then got promoted and left 3 months later, because from the position of IT department leader, he could easily then apply somewhere else and left the organization, leaving a huge harm, taking talent with him, of course. And that simply was really an issue which the organization could only catch up with spending nearly $250,000 more per 6 months on recruiting and advertising to get the attention of talent. But that doesn't repair the damage to the employer's brand. So you see, this is really bad management, really bad leadership as well. And of course, you can do something against that with training, coaching sessions, consultancy. You can, of course, book professional speakers, someone who speaks at your event to give an impulse how to do it better. Mentoring programs. Of course, you can have someone externally who can help you with project or interim management. I'm happy to talk with you about that because I offer these services. So feel free to drop me an email and we have a chat. But now we will look into how are we able to do it better. So step number 1, from the very beginning, you offer a very clear career path to the people. And that has to be set when people apply for the job. When you don't have them right now, I know it's quite a painful process. You have to set all the path up. You have to document it. But people will ask you, how does career work here? And you need to give them a proper answer. And the answer cannot be, let's see, or we will figure out on the way, because that is, again, arbitrary. And of course, aspect number 2 of how to do it better, tell them what are the opportunities, but also what are the limits. When people apply for a job and they say, I want to be a senior sales person here, but I actually want to become a sales executive, a sales leader in your organization, and you are a mid-sized company, there's only one sales leader in place. That person is well respected, and the position won't be available for the next 10 to 15 years. Then you have to be open and tell people this position will not be available in the near future. And then you have to see the reaction of the other person if they still want to apply for the job. Be open, what are the opportunities, but also be open, what are the limits. And also please accept, not everyone wants a career. There are people who want to do a really good job and they do not want to have a career. Never hold against someone when they say, I am happy to be a senior administrator or a junior administrator, or I want to work in the service center here and I'm just fine with that. These people are the backbone of your business. The people who are there every day, do excellent work, and they don't demand a career, but they just do amazing service for the organization. Never hold against someone when they don't want a career. Aspect number 3 of how to do it better. Tell the people who is the person you can talk to when any issues occur. So for example, people say, I expect a career, I see things are not moving forward here, who can I talk to? And you have to tell them a specific person. Don't tell them, my door is always open, because we know when the door is open and I walk in, then you will say, sorry, I have something else on the table, can we make an appointment in 6 weeks' time? And then something else will come in between. Name a specific person, because otherwise people will escalate it either to the unions if you have a representation in your organization, depending on which country you're in, but also people will talk to other colleagues escalating into spreading rumors what is going wrong in the organization. And that then would be your fault. So tell people who is the person to talk to and be specific. Aspect number 4 of how to do it better: never accept when someone gets promoted randomly or arbitrarily. Immediately talk about it, address it immediately, demand an explanation, and when they cannot give you an explanation, then you either have to make your own consequences from it, which means, for example, leave the organization or openly criticize it and find a solution there. However, you do not have the right to say everything in this organization goes wrong, but you never address the issue, you only talk down on others, and you only cause trouble by spreading rumors. That is not acceptable, because then you become part of the problem, not part of the solution. When you address the issue openly and they don't deliver a solution, then you have every right to escalate it or leave the organization. But if you do not address the issue, but only become part of the rumor circles, that's not a fair deal for the organization. Neither is it for you. Because as soon as you leave and they check your references, people will say that was the rumor person. And you don't want to be that person. So be sure that you always address when something goes wrong, and please address it immediately. Last but not least, the competency in the subject matter is not the only factor you have to consider when promoting people. We know these issues, and this is an ongoing problem for decades. The best administrator in IT might not be the best IT team lead. The best engineer might not be the best department leader, and so on and so forth. The best salesperson often is a horrible sales leader, because often between doing sales and leading sales is a completely different job. One is getting the job done, the other one is encouraging and empowering people to do the job well, while you by yourself often sit in front of reports, talking to boards, suppliers, etc., doing a completely different job which has nothing to do with what you did before. And when you become a leader, doing the job by yourself, the operational level job, is not your task anymore. So be sure that people must be a master not only of the hard side, the factual side of the business, but also a master on the soft side of the business. Because it's not only about competence when it comes to facts. Of course, that's important, and that's something which makes you great at the job you do. But when you want to promote people, you have to see, do they have the skills? Okay, but do they have the right attitude, and do they have the right skill set to lead people? And when people don't want to lead people, or when people simply don't have the skills, they will be bad leaders, and it's not a wise choice to promote these people. Because hard facts are okay, and much needed, of course, but soft factors, especially for leadership jobs in today's times, are even more important. And now we're going to talk to someone who is making the career ladder. We have a special guest here, Adam Richards, who studied law, and he didn't grow up in a privileged family. He didn't come from a rich background, and he made a career which, in a way that hasn't happened for a long time at his university, getting a training contract, which is high in demand, especially in the UK, getting a training contract even before he finished his degree. And now we're going to talk to someone who really made it up the career ladder into a very competitive industry without any tricks, without anything wrong, just someone who knows how to talk about career and who's going to give us an insight of career in the law industry. Adam Richards, a great person I spoke to. First, of course, I have to say thank you for listening to me up to here. This podcast now reached just today more than 25,000 listeners in nearly 1 year. Next year we have the 1 year anniversary. I am really overwhelmed by your support. Thank you very much for posting, sharing, supporting. Please keep doing so. I'm very happy that proper scientific content with no chumbawamba, no woo-woo, and no motivational, inspirational one-liners, just proper content is so much appreciated. Thank you very much for doing so. And now we head straight to the interview. Studying law is something that many people think they should do or want to do. The question is, should you study law? What's the motivation? And what are the myths and maybe the expectations you have to set right before you get into that journey? And I'm very happy to have someone here who did exactly that and succeeded tremendously. Hello and welcome, Adam Richards.
Hi, Niels. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for taking the time when I get straight into the topic. What was your motivation to study law? Because as far as I remember, you did not do the classical move of you went to school and then went straight to university. You had a bit of a different CV, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the motivation at the beginning was that I'd always wanted to go to university. I was one of those people that were in a relatively poorer background in the UK, and necessarily I wouldn't have gone to university. So my beginnings were, A levels, and then I went to work straight away. I started my early career in travel and tourism, just because it was something that I was interested in. I worked for, some rather big companies, Thomas Cook. Yeah.
You're cutting off right now. Hello? Are you still there? I can't hear you. Adam? Adam? I can't hear you.
I wanted to go to university and... Oh,
Adam, you just cut off. Sorry, Adam, you just cut off. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, I'm back.
Yeah. Could you just start again from the point so you worked for Thomas Cook and then it cut off right there. You said you worked for Thomas Cook because it was something you were interested in, and it cut off there.
Okay. Technology.
Yeah.
So I worked for Thomas Cook and travel and tourism, and it was one of those things that always excited me. I always wanted to travel the world and see new places, and it was just one of those career opportunities that approached me, and I took it. So I started an apprenticeship with Thomas Cook back then, and it was fun and I enjoyed it. But there was always that longing for, wanting to go to university. So I did have that in the back of my mind, even when I was at school. And I just thought, you know what, maybe now was the right time. And things just fell into place for me really at the time of me starting my university days, and the fact that, my partner was able to support me, and I didn't have any money worries at that point. So I just thought, well, maybe it is the time to, maybe start a new profession and maybe, take that jump. And I think that a lot of people would be quite scared to do that. I was nervous, as anybody would be, but I chose law, I think, moreover because I knew that there was potential security there in the long run, and law is one of those things that you have to be interested in it, otherwise you just won't get on with it. There's a hell of a lot of reading and a hell of a lot of academic background to it, and unless you've got that motivation, it can be a bad choice. Law isn't easy, and nobody ever is going to say that it is easy, but it's one of those very rewarding choices, I think. In the long run, I'm very happy at where I am, and I've been very lucky. Yes, I've worked very hard for it, and hard work does pay off, as I'm sure you're aware, Niels.
Absolutely.
But no, I think I just ended up in the right place at the right time. And I know that sounds really cheesy, but I think that it was very, very a case of I was in the right place at the right time. And I took that jump, went to university, and it did pay off. I do occasionally miss my times at EasyJet as cabin crew. It was a lot of fun, and I had a lot of friends and saw a lot of Europe, painted Europe orange. But I think now I just feel that I've achieved something that I always wanted to do. And university isn't for some people, and I totally get that, and it's difficult. And finishing my master's during a global pandemic wasn't easy. That there were ups and downs, and overall I think that I've got to the place where I want to be, and I think that kind of speaks a lot for itself.
Yeah. Excellent. So when you say it's a lot of work to do law, and we all know it is a lot of work, it's a lot of reading, a lot of academic background. When I look in your CV, and I spoke at your university, where you became the secretary of the Law Society and then the vice president. So quite straightforwardly asking, why on earth, when you have so much to do you take on other jobs which are, I think, unpaid besides all the work you have to do to get along with your studies? Because being vice president means you have to organize the events and keep contact with people and everything. You're basically a people manager besides all the work you have to do with a very challenging law degree. What was the motivation for that?
I I think that the motivation behind those particular roles were that you have to have some kind of extracurricular background, for applying to law firms.
Hmm.
And you can't just have your degree these days. And I think that's the same in any role, like even if you're looking at accountants, solicitors, doctors, whatever. I think that any profession, you need to have more than just a degree. I think and especially in law, I think a lot of law firms, they just expect you to have a degree. They expect you to have a 2-1 or higher in law.
Mm.
And you then need to have that bit extra. So I set out at, getting some work experience. I didn't necessarily need the commercial work experience because I had already worked for some big firms. But you need something on your CV to make you stand out alongside others. And I think my roles within the Law Society were important to me more than anything, just because I wanted to give back. And I think giving back to students in any capacity is amazing. And having you come down and do the talk for us, things like that gave a lot of students a lot of benefit. And I think looking back at those positions, yes, it was difficult, and I made it even more difficult for myself, putting myself in those positions of responsibility. But it also made me a better person, and it also made me understand the importance of giving back more than anything. And students struggle, and a lot of students struggle with money. They struggle with, like you say, those roles were unpaid. But some students, they have to work to go through their studies, and I think it makes you a better person. And as long as you're committed to the studying as well as working, I think you can achieve a lot more. I don't know, what am I trying to say? I just think that you have to have a bit more, a bit like I started this answer. You have to show businesses and you have to show firms that you're committed to the work, and you're committed, especially in law. Training contracts aren't easy to get, and a lot of people know that. You're up against thousands of people at the beginning, and you have to differentiate yourself, and you have to prove that you've done extra things. And I think the extracurricular stuff, and especially law societies, are very important at universities, because they not only offer talks by professionals such as yourself, but they also offer mock trials, they offer advocacy, negotiation skills. They give a lot more back than take, definitely. And I think that it's important for anybody considering a career in law or a career in any profession to have had a little bit extra. Put yourself out of your comfort zone, try and reach those potentials that you want to. And I think anything can happen if you let it, and you can achieve anything. I personally believe that. And me coming from a relatively poor background, I never ever once imagined becoming a lawyer when I was younger. It just wasn't there. But now I'm there, and now I'm in that position. It's all just because you put your mind to it. So you really can achieve anything if you try.
Excellent work. But you just mentioned one thing which is very important here. You said, and I think that is something which many people do not realize, you're up there against thousands and thousands of others who also want to get these training contracts. And I remember that an official from the university where you study told me that you were the first one in, I think, a decade who already got the training contract signed before you even finished your degree. Was that correct?
It is correct. Yeah. So I was
How
the
did you manage to do that? What is the secret sauce you added? Because I think many people would like to be in the same situation.
I think, a lot of I don't know, a lot of what happened that year, and like I said at the beginning, everything seemed to fall into place. And I'm incredibly grateful for all of the assistance I got. I was the first person in a very long time at Plymouth University to have obtained a training contract with such a prestigious firm in my second year of law. A lot of legal firms recruit 2 years in advance. So I had to, in my mind, work out where I wanted to be in 2 years' time. And, that would have been me finishing my degree and, not wanting to have a gap because I'd already worked and, I was a mature student. And I kind of didn't want any more gaps. So I didn't want to get to the end of my law degree having to then apply for positions that potentially wouldn't let me work for 2 years. So I kind of had to make sure that I applied at the right time. I had the experiences, like you've already mentioned, the secretary of the Law Society, vice president of the Law Society. I also worked part-time along my studies. I just think that I'm losing my train of thought here, Niels. Going off on a tangent. No, I think the most important part for me getting that position when I did was I put a lot of effort into those applications. B, I spent months refining them before they were submitted. I also took a lot of advice from my careers advisor at university, and please, if any students are listening, do get involved with the University Career Services, because they're fantastic. And I would not have got where I got without, Emily Packer was my careers advisor, and she pushed and pushed and pushed. And she saw something in me that I didn't see myself. I really didn't think I'd get the job that year. And it was a stab in the dark, but I pushed and pushed and pushed and got that. And, it was an amazing achievement, like you say, and it was fantastic to kind of have peace of mind, knowing that I would go straight from uni, straight from my master's into a professional position.
Absolutely. One more question I have. Many people say that when they did very well at school, and you work hard at school and then you get excellent grades, A, B, excellent grades left, right, and center. Many people talk about the shock when they realize that they study law and they try very hard and they just get through with an average mark. Is that a myth, or is it true that they are very strict on marking the exams?
Well, my own personal experience is that, law is very difficult. I started my higher education as a undergrad. So I did a access course to get onto the law degree. So I had an extra year at uni because I didn't completely finish my A-levels way back when.
Yeah.
And for me, there was a massive jump. And I don't think colleges or whatever, I don't think they totally prepare you for the next stage. And even after finishing my access course with a first, I went into law. My first exam in law, I almost failed. So it was a massive jump from that access course then into the degree. And it was a bit of an eye-opener. And I think at that point I questioned myself whether or not I should have just gone and done travel and tourism or cruise management. Because I probably would have ran away with that one. But no, I think they are strict at marking, and when you get put down like that, and I'm sure it's happened to every single person that no matter what you've done in your life, I think any exams are stressful. And with law, they're even more stressful because you're supposed to retain a massive amount of knowledge and a massive amount of reading. Without any books in those exams is incredibly stressful for anybody. And I think the most important part is that if you do get a bad mark or you fail something, never ever put yourself down, because it could have just been a bad day. It could have just been an awful question. And they are strict, but I think even if you finish your degree, a law degree, with a 2-1 or even a 2-2, I think that you can still manage to get into the profession. So as long as you're wanting it and you need that, aspiration needs to be seen by these firms, you will get there. And I think the most important part there is just don't put yourself down if you get a no. I had several no's. I had a couple of no's from London firms. And yes, it is disheartening. And it does put a lot of pressure on yourself. And you do put a lot of pressure on yourself in those positions. But you can get there and you will get there. It's just a matter of time. Back to the question, I just think that yes, exams are hard. Yes, marking is difficult, but I think marking has to be difficult in those kinds of degrees because, like you say, there's hundreds of people that go for law degrees, in my course alone had about 250 students, and you've got to try and differentiate yourself between those 250 people. And I think certain universities may have more lax marking, may have easier marking schemes. I think right now as well, I think a lot of universities have non-detriment policies because of the COVID situation. My master's had a non-detriment policy because we went online.
What does that mean for our international listeners? Because I think some people don't know what that UK term means.
That just basically means that if you don't do as well as you would have done in the circumstances, then you're not penalised for that. Okay. So yeah, you're not marked down because of the situation, basically. And that did help a lot of people, get through that maybe wouldn't have got through because of the circumstances. But I think for professionals and professions like law, the marking is always going to have to be quite difficult, and the exams are going to have to be quite hard because it's not an easy profession. And law constantly changes, as I'm sure you're aware. Even in Europe, I mean, laws change all the time, daily. And, you need to just be that kind of person that wants to keep on top of it.
Absolutely. So when we talk about the work as a lawyer, because I think many people might have a different impression from what they heard about how lawyers or barristers work compared to what the reality is. Many people think of when they go to a law profession, it means you have, of course, paperwork to do, but then you meet in the courtroom, you argue, you have these very well-known moments of solicitor versus a judge chatting back and finding a solution in one way or the other. How realistic is the picture of law that is conveyed, let's say, via the media compared to how the reality really is?
That's a very good question. I think a lot of law is seen to be exciting, fast moving. I think the likes of Suits even kind of make it look sexy, make it look like, one of those careers that you're like, wow, I want to be that person. I want to be Harvey Specter. That isn't how law work actually works, especially in the United Kingdom. Solicitors do a very good job. I mean, solicitors are the ones that do a lot of the legwork in court cases. So solicitors will gather information, they'll write defenses, we'll provide a barrister with everything they need to then argue in court, basically. There's a lot of paperwork. I'm currently a paralegal in the firm that I'm going to train with. And a lot of my day-to-day work is, document redaction. So, covering up personal information, things like that in documents that need to go to court so that they're disclosable. I do a lot of drafting. So I draft letters to the other side. I draft letters to solicitors. I do quite a lot of legal research. So if there's anything in particular, so I've been working on a lot of data breach stuff, and a lot of background research is needed so that you know where you stand or where your client stands. It's very different. I think that the point that Suits does, like I say, make law look sexy, make it look like, wow, that's where I want to be. I want to be Harvey Specter, like I said. But in reality, it's very different. It is an office job most of the time.
Really? So how much is law, the courtroom is 10%, 5%, 1%?
It depends what law you go into. A lot of litigation seats.
Let's say corporate litigation is where most people go to, because let's face it, people want to make a reasonable amount of money, I think, after this very hard studying. And there isn't that much money in criminal law unless you have the very famous cases, and these aren't many. So many will go for corporate litigation. Let's just focus on that. So how much court time is spent?
Not very much. I think you'd be quite surprised. I think it depends what your caseload is. It depends whether or not you go to court, because a lot of solicitors want to settle before court. They don't, you don't want the costs involved. Neither side wants to go to court, really. So I would say, 5%, probably, maybe even lower at some firms. But again, it will depend on how hard your firm wants to litigate. So a lot of firms will instantly issue proceedings and they'll want to go to court. They want their day in court. A lot of lay people want their day in court because that's what they imagine, it being, and it's all exciting. But 99% of solicitors, and I can probably quote most of them, don't want to appear in court. That's the very last thing that any solicitor would want. Barristers, obviously, they spend their time in court all the time. But
I think that there must be way less barristers compared to solicitors.
Yes, yeah, definitely, and 100%.
Excellent. So when people, just to round this interview up, when now people think, maybe I start my journey studying law. Because you have your own blog running, adamrichards.law.com. What are Adam Richards' top 3 tips when people think about, should I do a law degree? Should I get started in their journey? Yes or no? Your top 3 tips for people who now think about going on the journey of studying law.
I think personally, so number 1, I would probably say do your research, have a real think about whether it's right for you, because law, like I've said all the way through this, is difficult. It's not easy. Nobody's going to sugarcoat it. And I think that, as long as you're prepared to put the work in, go for it. I think even if it's on the back of your mind that, oh, law, maybe that's interesting, do some research, have some discussions with some solicitors, speak to trainees, reach out to me if you want to. I'm always happy to speak to anybody that's interested in law. It's massively rewarding. I mean, I'm so proud of what I've achieved, and over quite a short period of time, within 5 or 6 years, I've managed to become a trainee solicitor, which is amazing. So yeah, 1, do your research, have a real think about it, maybe speak to a careers advisor just to see your options, because there's nowadays laws changing massively, and the way that you get to become a solicitor even in the UK is massively changing over the next few years, with the super exams coming in, the SQEs and things like that. So do your research, have a little look. There's even routes into solicitors now, like becoming an apprentice, so you can earn all the way alongside your studies, and firms will pay for that. So yeah, do your research. Tip number 1. Tip number 2, be prepared for anything. You have to be open, you have to be ready and willing to do things that maybe you didn't want to do in the past. Put yourself out of your comfort zone. Like I've said, law isn't easy, but it's massively rewarding and massively exciting. I'm excited for the future and see what comes. And, it will be amazing when we get to that position of, potentially being a partner one day. And, law is a massively rewarding career. And I think that it's long running career as well. I think that it's something that you could do for a very long time. I think we're always going to need lawyers in the world.
Absolutely. When one thing is for sure in a more and more complex world is then we need experts to do the job of litigating in case of conflict.
Yeah, definitely. So there's always going to be work there, which is a good thing. It's very highly competitive as well. Like I've said, I think that you kind of have to want it to get there, I think. So do have a good long think before you make the jump, is probably a big tip. And then number 3, go for it. I think, even if you're slightly interested in law, a law degree gives you so much academic background. It gives you so much, personal attributes, personal traits change. I mean, me as a person, and Niels can probably back this, I have completely changed over the last 5 years. I'm now a completely different person than I was 5 years ago. And that is thanks to the law degree, and to most extent, and my positions within the Law Society. It does change you, and law, you don't have to go into law if you do a law degree. I think that, some people think, oh, a law degree is just for lawyers. No, not at all. I think that it provides you with such good skills, and, advocacy, for instance, public speaking, just to name a few. I mean, it's provided me with a lot of tools that I can take forward, into any career, not necessarily law. I think that law students are highly sought after in a lot of positions. So a lot of graduate roles in other firms will look at law degrees and think, wow, they've done a law degree, that's amazing. I just think it provides you with a lot more. So even if you don't want to do law, I think a law degree is something you should consider, because it does provide you with lots of transferable skills.
Excellent. This is very good advice for people who are now thinking about joining this journey or starting this journey in in the near future. And of course, I'm going to put your contact data in the show notes of this podcast so people are able to contact you directly. And at the end of this interview, there's only one thing for me left to say. Adam, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Niels. It's been wonderful.